The most dangerous person in the room. It's usually not the one shouting orders or waving a weapon. It's the one sitting quietly in the corner, smiling, because they've already won the game before you even realized it started. Imagine an army marching toward a city, fully prepared for a grueling, months-long siege. The soldiers are terrified, the generals are tense, and the cost is expected to be thousands of lives. But as they reach the gates, they find them wide open. The enemy leaders are already at a table, pens in hand, signing away their territory with a polite nod. No arrows were fired, no walls were breached. The war was over before the first soldier even broke a sweat. This isn't a movie trope or a high fantasy novel. It's the ultimate goal of high-level power. It's the art of the invisible win. It's not about having the biggest muscles. It's about having the most disciplined mind. Just careful planning and absolute control. When people think about powerful generals, they usually picture the cinematic chaos of the battlefield. Armies clashing, mud flying, weapons raised, and leaders screaming commands over the roar of war. We love that drama. But in the real world, some of the most effective leaders in history viewed a physical battle as a failure of strategy. Because once a battle begins, you've entered the realm of the fog of war. Everything becomes unpredictable. A sudden rainstorm, a panicked horse, or a single misunderstood order can turn a sure victory into a slaughter. You lose people, you lose resources, and even if you win, the cost can be so high that you're left too weak to defend what you just conquered. This is where strategy matters more than strength, and few thinkers explain this better or more ruthlessly than Niccolo Machiavelli. Machiavelli didn't care about how the world should work. He didn't care about fair play or honor in the way philosophers did. He spent his life observing how power actually functions in the dark, dusty halls of government and the cold reality of the front lines. In his view, the smartest leaders don't rush into conflict. They shape the world long before anyone even considers picking up a sword. They understand that the real contest between rivals often happens quietly, in the whispers of a dinner party, the wording of a trade deal, and the precise timing of a silence. The first strategy behind this approach starts with the invisible weapon, perception. Before a general ever faces an opponent, that opponent has already built a mental statue of them. They have assumptions about their strength, their temper, and their readiness. Strong leaders are master architects of this mental statue. They understand that perception is reality. If an opponent believes you are an unbreakable wall of organization and preparation, they act with fear. They hesitate. They second-guess their own brilliant plans because they're worried about what you might have up your sleeve. But if they think you're weak or distracted, they take sloppy risks. Because of that, experienced leaders treat their reputation like a physical weapon. Sometimes this means a show of force, moving troops to a border just to let the sun glint off their armor. Other times, it simply means letting a specific rumor leak to the right person at the right time. The goal isn't always to lie. It's to create uncertainty. When an enemy is uncertain, they are paralyzed. And in a world of power, a paralyzed enemy is already a defeated one. Another key strategy is the art of the internal fracture. A united opponent is a nightmare. When a group is aligned, their strength doesn't just add up, it multiplies. But Machiavelli knew a secret. Unity is usually a thin mask covering a dozen different egos. Smart strategists don't bang their heads against the locked door. They look for the rust on the hinges. There are always differences, small jealousies, competing interests, or internal tensions between leaders. Instead of confronting a strong group directly, a master strategist lets those divisions grow. They might offer a special favor to one person in the enemy camp, knowing it will make the others jealous. They apply pressure in ways that force the group to argue about how to respond. Over time, the group starts to eat itself from the inside out. By the time you finally step forward, you aren't dealing with one solid opponent. You're dealing with a dozen small bickering factions. You don't even have to fight them. You just have to wait for them to finish each other off. Then there is the most difficult skill of all, timing. We live in a world that praises the fast mover and the hustler. But in the game of power, acting too quickly is a sign of desperation. The most powerful leaders are incredibly comfortable with silence. They wait. They observe the cycles. They watch their rivals make the first move, knowing that the person who moves first often reveals their hand too early.
Patience isn't just waiting, it's a form of active control. It's letting the enemy wear themselves out through overconfidence or bad decisions. Sometimes the best thing you can do to win is nothing. If you wait long enough, an arrogant opponent will eventually trip over their own ego. When that happens, the effort required to finish them is almost zero.
Finally, there is the strategy of the golden bridge. This is about offering peace, but in a way that is essentially a total surrender wrapped in a gift box. If you corner an enemy completely, they will fight like a trapped animal, and that's when they are most dangerous. Instead, you give them a way out. You offer terms that benefit you immensely, but allow them to keep a tiny bit of their dignity. This is the ultimate win. Your opponent accepts your terms, the situation changes in your favor, and the best part? They don't feel like they lost a war. They feel like they made a smart business decision. You get the land, the resources, and the power, and you didn't have to bury a single one of your soldiers to get it. Over time, all of these strategies lead to a psychological tipping point. The opponent looks at your reputation, looks at their own internal bickering, looks at your infinite patience, and they realize resistance is a waste of time. Their confidence evaporates. Their alliances dissolve. At some point, the fight just stops making sense to them. And when that happens, they step back on their own. There's no Hollywood explosion, no final duel, just a quiet exit. For Machiavelli, this is what real mastery looks like. It's not about winning the battle. It's about making the battle unnecessary. It's about being the person who shapes the world so perfectly that by the time the fight is supposed to happen, you've already been in control for years. Because when strategy is handled with this kind of cold, calculated precision, victory isn't something you fight for. It's something that simply becomes inevitable. Most people watch and move on. But if you actually want to understand how strategy works in real situations, it helps to keep learning it consistently. That's what this channel focuses on, breaking things down in a simple, practical way. So if that's something you're into, you can subscribe. That way, you won't miss the next video.